Hello, welcome in to the Irish NFL show. It is wildcard weekend. Just before we started, the Irish NFL show was ended by Matchbook Betting Exchange. £20, €20 welcome offer gets you money back as cash if your first bet loses. And I've been told in the chat already that it's super wildcard weekend, so I'm going to bring everybody out. I apologize. Welcome into everybody, folks. It's finally time. It's playoff time. Brian, Colin, Mark, got a special guest coming in 2 seconds. Just want to remind everybody before we started the games, gentlemen. Raiders, Bengals tomorrow night, Patriots, Bills as well. Eagles, Bucks, 49ers, Cowboys, Steelers, Chiefs, Cardinals, Rams on Monday night. But let's start as we mean to go on. Maybe by getting the captions right. Sorry, boys at the bottom. I'm going to bring in Jeff Reinbold to kick off the Irish NFL show on Wildcard Weekend. Jeff, you've made it to the top. Look, you've made it to the top of the show here. Congratulations.
I actually cannot believe it. I looked at your graphic where you had all the quarterbacks and all that, for Super Wildcard Weekend, and I looked down in the corner, and that's the graphic, and look down there, and there's Kyler Murray underneath George Kittle's shoulder pad.
I really didn't mean to do that. I didn't.
You guys
not that small.
Have
He's not that
such
small.
attention to detail that you put it at true scale. That is exactly how tall he is. Because I met him at the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and I'm taller than he is, and I'm not very tall. So that's a great job, man. I'm telling you, this show, every time I come on, you fascinate me with the attention to detail.
Well, that was my Monday night done well, and then I found out late in Monday night, Jeff, that it's called Super Wildcard Weekend, and it is super indeed, and we're here after 18 weeks. We started late, Jeff, because you were talking about Joe Judge and the Giants. Let's focus on the playoffs. You must be buzzing. I'm joking, by the way, but you must be buzzing that the playoffs are now upon us.
Yeah, you know what, man? It's just such an amazing thing. Playoff football in pro football is incredible. And I'm really lucky because I get to go through it twice. I get to go through it coaching it, and then I get to go through it, calling it for Sky Sports. And, the finality of it. This is the thing that is so unique in all of the pro sports world. You talk about whether it's the World Cup or the NBA Finals or Major League Baseball or, very, very few times do you get in a situation from the start of the playoffs, it's won or done, right? Where you're living in a world of, if you don't get it done this week, there's no second chance, there's no aggregate scores, there's no best out of 7, best out of 5, you better do it today and then live to fight another day. And then hopefully you can just keep playing on. And it's so incredibly, stressful for the players and coaches, for the fans, for everybody. It's the greatest drama in sport.
And Jeff, maybe building on that, because this weekend, as you said, it's win or go home, and you've got a number of quarterbacks making their playoff appearance. I mean, you got in the first game of the weekend, Carr makes his playoff debut because he broke his leg the last time, going up Joe Burrow, who's pulling up trees in his second year. Mac Jones, the rookie, obviously. You've got Kyler Murray making his, and Jalen Hurts. In terms of players, especially QBs, we know how important, there's no position like it in sports, but a QB making their playoff debut, what kind of pressure is that, and how do you think they will deal with it?
I talked to Trent Dilfer, who won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. And, he said to me, he said, you can't even appreciate the enormity of the responsibility when you get to the playoffs as a quarterback. And I thought that was a really great way to say it. Here's the thing, Colin, and you really hit on a great topic, right? Because think about, as a quarterback, you are defined by wins and losses. Your legacy is defined by what you do in playoff football. So David Carr has a lot of detractors, and part of the reason for that is he hasn't played in a playoff game yet. He has no playoff resume. If your Tom Brady, you're out of the woods. If you're Aaron Rodgers, as great as Aaron Rodgers is, if he wants to be in that elite, he needs to win another Super Bowl. That's how quarterbacks are defined. Ryan Tannehill, they picked him off the scrap heap in Miami, and he came and he's been to an AFC championship game, but he's never been to a Super Bowl. Steve McNair has been to a Super Bowl, right? So he'll always be in Steve McNair's shadow in Tennessee until he gets to a Super Bowl. Is that unfair? Yeah. But if you want fair, right, go see a judge, because you don't get fair in pro football.
Well, we won't be going to see Joe Judge anymore, Jeff. That's for sure.
Wow. That was one of the best I've ever heard.
Never a dull week.
That either.
When I actually was going down the coaching route on this question, because it's never a dull week in the NFL. Thankfully, we're going to start talking about the games, but 8 openings this week across the league in terms of head coaching positions. The one that fascinates me the most, actually, is the dismissal of Flores. Everybody was quite surprised come Monday afternoon when we saw the news, but as the week has gone on, there's been a lot of bad press coming out about how he was managing the players, how he was managing the situation with Tua, and there was a complete kind of disconnect between him and the general manager, and in the end, the general manager has won out. Were you surprised that came about? And I suppose he is deemed to be one of the leading candidates elsewhere now in terms of where he will go from here.
Well, I tell you what, my knee-jerk reaction, I was surprised. And then as I sat back for a few minutes and I thought about it, when you've been in this business as long as I have, you can read the tea leaves a little bit, right? And there were enough things that happened in his tenure to make you go, something's not right there, right? You don't go through what in essence turned out to be 4 offensive coordinators, 4 offensive line coaches, and not have something dysfunctional, right? Because remember, Flores is the guy who hired all those guys, right? It wasn't that he inherited them, or he hired them, right? And he got rid of one and hired another one. Then he got rid of that one and hired another one. They got rid of that one and hired another one. That's an alarm bell right there. And then when you openly romance another quarterback, when you've taken a guy that's fifth in the NFL draft, right? What are you saying to him and to everybody on that football team, right? So it was interesting on our podcast tonight. We talked about I talked to Kendall Gammon, and we talked about Coach Vermeil. And I said, what made him so special? What made him a success? What made him able to take 2 teams to one of the few guys to take 2 teams to the Super Bowl? And he said it was all about relationships, right? And so it's so important in this time in football, professional football, that you be a relationships guy, right? Now, here's the thing let's expand upon that further, right? Look at the number of Belichick assistants who've gone out and flirted with success because they've all had a little bit of success when they went, and then were unemployed within 3 years. Is that because they're not good football coaches? No. Is that because they're dumb guys? No. It's what they grew up in that organization in New England is so unique that you can't, nobody has been able to simulate it outside of that test tube, right? It's like it's this magical thing that you take it out of the laboratory and it falls to pieces, because the structure that they have in New England is so unique. In New England, you have to please one guy, not multiple guys, one guy. And I think what's happened is every single one of those guys has kind of aspired to be that person. And in the end, it didn't work that way for any of them. So I would be shocked if he doesn't get another job real soon. But also, the other thing that's all of this stuff that's come out of Miami in this last little bit, don't think for a second that wasn't engineered in some way by, it's called damage control, right? So, this is the dirty little part of our business, and it's part of our business, and it's what we all sign up for.
Jeff, as you're saying, Brian Flores, first offensive coordinator he took Chad O'Shea, who was a wide receivers coach in New England, and then when he disposed of him after a year, that you could say, well, hang on, if he was your handpicked guy to lead your offensive philosophy, is the question, do you really have an offensive philosophy, and what is the goal there? But it's funny, you mentioned the Belichick assistants, and obviously Bill O'Brien is a prime example of someone, went somewhere for a while, got a degree of success, more than a degree of success, back-to-back playoff appearances, got a very talented young quarterback, a talented roster. And there's this moment, I think, in Houston Texans football history, 21 zip up against the Kansas City Chiefs, kicked the field goal on a short 4th and 1 rather than continue to press the button. And that was the moment that they didn't realize that I think they were at ground zero of both Hiroshima and Nagasaki all at the same time, because it's been nothing but a nuclear wasteland ever since that moment going forward in that franchise. And this week, of course, as well, we're talking about Brian Flores being fired. 3 days later, after Black Monday, David Culley, the second last African-American coach in the NFL at that point, only Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season, is still in the NFL as an African-American head coach. But David Culley, one and done, somewhat of a scapegoat, one might say. And, Houston, we have several problems. What's your take on the Houston situation, especially in how it relates to Coach Culley and his experience?
Well, I think it's interesting, what you threw out there is a lot of facts, right? Everybody points to that field goal, and I think that the issues in Houston began when O'Brien wanted more and more and more power. He wanted more responsibility for setting the roster. He wanted more input on the players. He wanted more input on the draft. He's an outstanding football coach. Bill O'Brien's a great football coach. But again, when you come up in that environment, right? And here's the thing about New England. New England typically brings in assistant coaches without a lot of outside experience because they want to teach them the Patriot way. They're not interested in input on what you did before, where like one of the things that bogs organizations down is when they get, you got 25 coaches on your staff and you're talking about what you're going to do for training camp. And, you got 25 different, well, when I was here, we did it this way. Then I was here, we did it this way. And Belichick doesn't want that. He wants their way, the Patriot way, his way. So that's what you grow up in. And that's your only experience in pro football. And go back through his assistant coaches. They're all the same. They all came up that way. None of them. Romeo Crennel might be the only one that was probably had outside professional experience. They were groomed in that. That's what they know, and that's what they aspired to be. And so, when you try and take that and put it in a different environment, it doesn't work. And so, are they? Is Matt Patricia a dumb guy? No. Is he a bad coach? No. Josh McDaniels? Josh McDaniels took Tim Tebow to the playoffs, right? But you can't sustain it that way. And so sustainability is about relationships and everybody on the same page. Chad O'Shea is a friend of mine. And Chad O'Shea and Brian Flores were young assistant coaches together in New England. And Brian wanted Chad to come because he could trust him and he knew him and he was an offensive guy. And he gave him the offensive coordinator title. And I can remember this explicitly. They beat New England the last game of the year. And I remember they had a couple trick plays in there to beat New England. And I remember watching Chad run off the field past Flores, and there was a kind of an icy exchange. And I thought, uh-oh, because I've seen that before, right? But it wasn't just him. Then they went out and, they bring in an experienced guy, right? Because Chad didn't have any experience as a coordinator. So now I need an experienced guy. And that doesn't work. And then he goes out and hires 2 of them. And that doesn't work. At some point, you got to say, wait a second now. Is it, somebody's okaying these hires, or somebody's bringing these guys in and saying, that's my guy. At some point, you got to turn and look in the mirror.
Sorry for disappearing there. For some reason, Jeff Reinbold was talking 10 times in the background. I don't know what was going on with my computer, so I had to log off and log on again. Jeff, it might have been because of my next question. We'll get one more question each year. I don't want to really talk about them, but I have to, and I appreciate the fact they're in the playoffs. The Raiders playing the Bengals. You said in your podcast earlier on tonight, you think the Raiders are going to win. You think the Raiders are going to win.
Let's talk about the Raiders. Let's talk about the Raiders. The Raiders are a story, man. I mean, seriously. And you guys know I'm a Raider fan, but look at that team. You lose a head coach quarter of the way through the season, right? And I'll go back even further. When Carl Nassib comes out as the first openly gay player, right? Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just talking about distractions, right? And if you're a coach in pro football, the one thing you want to eliminate as much as you possibly can is distractions. Things that take your focus off of the – Coach Vermeil used to say it to us like this: keep the main thing, right? So Nassib comes out. Now you got that going on, right? So everybody's answering questions about that and da-da-da-da. Okay, then you move to Vegas, and now you're dealing with the Vegas distraction. And then your head coach is forced to resign because of, inflammatory emails he sent to the commissioner of the league and da-da-da-da. Then you got a player who gets in a DUI and kills somebody. Then you got another player who gets in a DUI. Rich Bisaccia has faith. We say in our business that you got to get prepared. You're going to get 2 lightning bolts every year. 2 of them. 2 things that you had no idea were going to happen. They're going to affect your team positively or negatively. They're going to come. So you better be ready for them. How about the Raiders? It's been a lightning storm all year. And somehow they found their way to the playoffs.
Jeff, when it comes to distractions, this time of year, with the way the NFL is set up and the way coaching hires work and the interview process, and also in terms of general managers, you got coaches and front office execs who are trying to juggle preparing for a game with preparing for interviews. Do you how sustainable is that? How can that work? How can you have people focus on winning? As you said, these are huge. This is win or go home, and yet they're trying to juggle. You've got Dan Quinn and down in Dallas, and you've got their OC who have got job interviews. And Kellen Moore, and they both of them, and in fairness to Dan Quinn, he's trying to help Kellen Moore, but they're trying to prepare for this game and do interviews. How do you go about that?
Well, I think here's the reality, Coleman. That's really a good question, right? And I think one that maybe the fans really have an interest in. Most of the work, most of the preparation for an interview is done by your agent. It's not done by you, right? So, for example, if I'm going to go interview for a job, my agent, Paul Sheehy in Denver, will prepare for me a document with everything that I need to know about that situation. I mean, it's detailed. I mean, it's about 100 pages thick, front to back, right? And they will talk about all the quote, to use their term, salient points about the job, right? And so What your job is to do is to brief yourself to go in and present the best program that you can based upon what your agent prepares for you, because it's not like other jobs, right? It's not like, oh, the cowboy job's open, I think I'll apply. This is going on all year, 24/7, 12 months a year. The agents are constantly working to put their guy in position for these jobs. Here's the thing, and this is why it's become this. The average NFL coach is going to be $2.5 million a year, head coach. And I think that's on the low end, right? The agent gets 4% of that 2.5 million. So do you think that the agents are motivated to have NFL head coaches? And then the spinoff of that column is that they also have a number of assistant coach clients, right? So for example, my agent, Paul Sheehy in Denver, if a job comes open, he's going to go to that guy if there's a connection there, and he's going to go, well, you need to hire this guy to be your special teams guy, or this guy for this role, or you need to find a place for this guy. So if you watch college football, and this is where it's really changed, and now in college football, there's an agent by the name of Jimmy Sexton, and if you get a chance, get him on your show, because he is the kingpin of college football. And his number one client is Nick Saban. And if you look at all of these assistant coaches, Steve Sarkisian, Bill O'Brien, all of these guys if they get fired, they get rehabbed in Alabama on Saban's staff, and then they kick them out and they become head coaches. Kirby Smart, like I said, Sarkisian at Texas, Bill O'Brien now with multiple NFL opportunities, or to interview anyway. So it's an ongoing process all the time. It's not like it was in the old days. And when I say the old days, I'm talking 15 years ago, where the agents weren't a factor. And the general manager would pick up the phone and he would call a friend of his and say, who do you like, or who's out there, right? Or you as an assistant would call the general manager and say, I'd really like to talk to you about your head coaching job. Man, those days are way gone. It's now way past all that stuff. And you may never, as a candidate, you may never talk to the organization until you walk in the door and say hello.
Jeff, there's one playoff game this weekend that's really standing out for me. It brings me back to my teenage years. They played each other in the playoffs, 92, 93, 94, and that's the Niners Cowboys. It's going to be some game. What's your thoughts on it? A lot of people are leaning 49ers all week, but the Cowboys might like that.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I had Jesse Sapolo on the podcast tonight, and it was outstanding. You guys got to get him on your show because he's fantastic. But, Jesse played center for 3 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. He told me today, he goes, I had a unique view. So he had Steve Young's hand up his butt, and he had Joe Montana's hands up his butt, and he had Jeff Garcia's hands up his butt. But he said, we hated them, and they hated us. But the unique thing about it, right? And I tried to build context so maybe our fans would understand. Who are the 2 biggest rivals in Irish soccer?
Shamrock Rovers and
Linfield and Glentoran. Don't listen to Brian. Linfield and Glentoran. I'm only joking, Brian. Sorry, I had to do it.
He's talking about
Gaelic football. Yeah, Dublin and Kerry. That's the better one.
All right. So, they hate each other, right? Hate each other. Correct or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your connection's a wee bit choppy, Jeff. It's a wee bit choppy. Do you want just go out and come back in again? Yeah, literally 2 seconds. Yeah, I don't know. This is an intriguing conversation, and I know once we get Mark and Brian's questions, we are going to go into our picks because we've got 5 games to go through. Yeah, Vamos Mexico, call him. Yeah,
Yes, indeed. To all our Mexican friends also.
Sorry, Jeff. Go on ahead. You're talking about the 49ers? I think. Can you hear us, Jeff? No. Okay, we'll see.
We're back,
See
guys.
if he's maybe available in a second.
You might have some muffins in the oven, Michael.
I think it was our argument between Bohemians and you said Shamrock Rovers, and I said Linfield Thorns, so that's my bad. I think I messed up the audio a wee bit. Jeff, give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. He
I
can
think
hear us.
it was
It's all
me
good.
because
There he is.
I was down to basically no battery, but I plugged it in. Well, okay, imagine how much animosity there is between those two organizations, right? And then you're a star of the Shamrocks. And all of a sudden, in the middle of your career, you decide you're going to go over to the other side. Now, like, it'd be like going from Liverpool to Man U, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen. Well, in that rivalry, it happened a number of times. Charles Haley goes from one to the other. Kenny Norton goes from one to the other. Deion Sanders goes from one to the other, right? I mean, as goofy as Terrell Owens is, he celebrates on the star, and then he goes and plays for the Cowboys. That's how intense that rivalry was, to the point where the owners, the DiBartolos, Eddie DiBartolo, was kind of like the young, brash Italian, flaunt my money, wear pinky rings, slick my hair back, like completely different than the Rooneys and, the old school money NFL guys, right? And then all of a sudden, Jerry Jones comes in, and he's the hotshot oil guy from Texas that, never met a microphone he didn't like. And all of a sudden, it's like this complete change in the NFL. Because one of the things, and Jesse talked about it today, one of the things that the Niners did was they treated their players way better than NFL players were being treated at that time. When they flew, they all went first class. They would charter 747s to fly to play games on the road, while everybody else was flying commercial, right? And they're sitting in coach. You imagine 285-pound offensive lineman at that time sitting in a coach seat for 6 hours to fly from Los Angeles to play in Atlanta, right? Well, Mr. DiBartolo, he said, no, we don't. We're the 49ers. So what ended up happening was there was a shift of power in the NFL. And all of a sudden, players who had the same agent were saying, listen, I'll take a minimum salary to come to the 49ers to get treated like that and win a championship, as opposed to play, for $50,000 more to be in Houston, where the AstroTurf is nasty, and or Philadelphia, where you got rats in the building. And I mean, and then Jerry Jones comes in, and he's competitive, and he's going to go, whoa, wait a second now. Nobody's going to be better than the star, right? And so all of a sudden, this arms race happens in the National Football League. And who benefits? The fans benefit because they get a great rivalry. And the players benefit because the players are treated today better than they would have ever been treated had it not been for that rivalry.
Jeff, I'm just laughing. You bringing up Jerry Jones being the kind of the wheeler dealer oil man. I remember back in, I think, 95, Jerry not only was suing the NFL pretty regularly, like Al Davis did back in the day. Obviously, we're bringing up the Raiders, but famously did a deal with Pepsi after the NFL did a deal with Coke and decided that Pepsi were going to be the official soft drink of the Dallas Cowboys, and kept all of those monies for himself and the Dallas Cowboys franchise. So a pretty slick businessman out there.
See, here's the thing, guys, that this makes the NFL so unique. And it's 32 of the biggest capitalists in all the world, right? that live in a communist society because they have revenue sharing. And, for years and years and years, that was all good because the Rooneys and the Maras and, the old school, the Fords and all of those families, it was all like kind of an old boys club. And then these two rebels come in and they want to do it their own way, right? And like you said, that deal with Pepsi, he sued the NFL because he looked at his balance sheet and he said, wait a second, the Cowboys are the number one, and I think they still are, the number one merchandise seller in the National Football League, and we're giving money to the Cincinnati Bengals who can't sell anything and don't really care because we're propping them up. It rubbed against his capitalist nature,
Yep.
right? And so that whole thing, man, we could have a whole show on just that whole issue.
Oh, well, I mean, Jeff, we could have a whole show about the 32 capitalists successfully running a monopoly, which somehow still avoids antitrust legislation and the implications of the Sherman Act. But I mean, that's a very different business show, I'll say in that regard. But I will say this: you're rocking the silver, I'm rocking the black, so we both got some Raiders connections going on this evening. But one game that's interesting to me, Jeff, there's a great stat. 9 out of the last 10 teams to have the highest quarterback cap hit have failed to make the playoffs. A stat that continued this year with Seattle and Minnesota topping the pile, and obviously both of them not making the playoffs. Packers fans, be very afraid for next season, is all I'll say. But one quarterback who has constantly taken reductions, shall we say, in his salary to build a team around him is Mr. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady, the greatest of all time. And another quarterback who won't cost very much because he's still on his rookie contract is Jalen Hurts. Beauty and the Beast, the young and the old, something and a shovel. You can use whatever analogy between the two quarterbacks you'd like in this regard, Jeff. But it's a fascinating matchup between literally the bold and the beautiful, the young and the old in this regard. Nobody's giving Philly much of a chance. Let's be honest about this. But the Bucs are so banged up. I mean, can the old man roll it out one more time, or how do you see things happening in this game?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors at play in this game, right? Like, I just did my research and watched a lot of film on Philadelphia. Philadelphia can run the football. They have a really, really good scheme, and they have a unique talent at quarterback. Because if you asked me as a football coach to say who's a bigger threat running the football, Jalen Hurts or I don't know, pick one. Pick Lamar Jackson or
Josh Allen
or Kyler Murray or any of those. I'm going to tell you Jalen Hurts, because the design of what they do is so good. And, Kyler Murray and Josh Allen will beat you when when it's not a design run, they just pull it down, they run around and make a play. Jalen Hurts will beat you inside the scheme. Their scheme, when they get into 2 tight ends and they start running, it's really triple option football. It's like college football. And it's something that you don't see in the NFL, and it's hard to prepare for. It's like in college when you see Army or Navy come out with those little kids that should be playing Division I AA football and beating, like Army beat Missouri in the playoff game. Well, they have no business beating Missouri, but the scheme is so unique and hard to prepare for that you get an opportunity. If they can stay close, they got a chance. Now, people talked about Vita Vea coming back being big for Tampa, and it is. But if Shaq Barrett's hurt and JPP is hurt, when you look at Philadelphia's offense, their running game is basically from what we call the C gap outside. So it's from the tackle out. So Vita Vea is not going to be a factor by his alignment. And if their edge is not strong, if they're not good on the edges, they're going to have a challenge with Philadelphia.
And Jeff, to add to that, Levante David is hurt as well. He might play, but he's hurt. So it's those 3 key linebackers. And I don't know if you saw, but Ronald Jones is announced as out, as well as Cyril Grayson. So that's a big loss, especially Jones.
It's going to be a nasty, nasty day weather-wise in Philadelphia. It's going to rain. It's going to be cold, right? So if you remember, there's some historical precedence to this. When Tony Dungy had a really good Tampa Bay Bucks team, he went up to play Philadelphia in the playoffs, and it was a nasty day, and they got beat, and they had no business losing to Philadelphia. So can the Philadelphia Eagles win that game? Yeah, I think they can, but they can't get behind early, and Leonard Fournette will be the key, I think, because I think the Bucks are going to have to be able to run the ball.
Jeffrey, every game obviously on Sky Sports this weekend. Great to see you back on television in the UK, Ireland, and further afield. Raiders, Bengals tomorrow, Patriots, Bills, and obviously the other 4 games this weekend. We know you'll be on Sky from tomorrow night. We want to thank you for coming on. We massively appreciate your support, and we want you to find a way to mention us sly off the cuff tomorrow night live on television. I'm only joking. I'm joking. If you Thanks so much for coming on, Jeff, and enjoy tomorrow night, and enjoy your new screen or whatever the fancy word you used for that earlier on.
All right, guys. It's great to see you. Keep doing your great stuff, man. I love your show.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for your support, Jeff. Chat to you next week. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Jeff Reinbold, Sky Sports, NFL, Montreal. I can't pronounce the name. Montreal Special Teams. Alouettes. We're going to get into all the games. We got the 2 games on Saturday. We got the 3 games on Sunday. We will come back on Monday night, apparently, as long as none of us are grounded. If we're talking about the NFL too much, to look at the Cardinals against the Rams. Are we ready to look at these games? Yeah?
Let's go for it.
Let's go. As Brian's jacket says, they're NY New Year. I think that's what it means.
Happy New Year,
guys. Happy New Year. And let's get straight into it, Colin. We do have a comment, and thank you to everybody that's commented. Over 2,000 people have watched this live already, so we'll try and get to your comments ASAP. Colin, Julio says he loves your jacket. Vamos Mexico. Vamos Super Wildcard Weekend. Let's look ahead. This isn't the first game. I wanted to talk about this, but I can't. Right, Raiders, Bengals. The Las Vegas Raiders, who last Sunday weren't in until the last kick of the game, or like the last few plays of the game, going up against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. What a game. The playoffs start. The ball is over, boys. The picks are in. Colin, who have you got in this game?
Yeah, this should be a really intriguing game. I think we talked about the fact that it is 2 QBs making their playoff debut, and Jeff talked about the Raiders and some of the issues they've had to contend with this year in terms of the head coach, in terms of Henry Ruggs, and a gun charge, I think, as well for other players and whatnot. So look, I think the Raiders deserve immense credit. They looked like they were out of the playoff contention at one stage, and then they turned it around. They won their last 4 games and 1-score games, close games. So kudos to them, first interim head coach to make the playoffs. For Zach Taylor, it was a Damascus moment, essentially, where he realized, I think, at some point this year that, look, the offensive line is a sieve, and there's nothing I can do about fixing that. So I just need to let Joe Burrow cook and let him deal with it. And Burrow has, especially obviously in the last couple of weeks. For me, I suppose this is, for the Raiders, I think they need Max Crosby to turn the pressure that he gets into sacks. Burrow is really good at escaping, but Crosby had over 100 pressures this year. Yannick Ngakoue had 60, so you're talking about averaging 80 between the two. So that'll be where they will look to exploit the weaknesses on the Bengals O-line. This is an opportunity for Derek Carr to show that he can play in cold weather. The stats suggest, and Jack Del Rio would tell you that he can't. So now Derek generally doesn't take too kindly to people criticizing or questioning him. Now he gets an opportunity to shut them up. But for me, I suppose what this comes down to is a tweet that Dan Orlovsky put out, and I heard Sam Monson mention it on the PFF podcast. So Joe Burrow has played 6 have-to-win games in his career, right? With LSU, Bama, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Clemson. And with the Bengals, Week 16, Week 17, the Ravens, and the Chiefs. In those games, he's 6-0. He's 2,669 passing yards, averaging 444 a game, 27 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I'm going with Joe Burrow and the Bengals to win this.
Colin mentions the quarterback pressures on this Bengals. Sorry, on in terms of the Raiders players, 216 in total quarterback pressure this year, the highest in the league. It's significant, bearing in mind that the blitz side of things was quite low. So when they play well and when they get quarterbacks like we saw for large parts of the game last weekend, they're very effective. And not much has been said about the game which was played in Week 11 because it was 32-13 in the end to the Bengals. But having reflected on that game and gone through it in more detail, it was a very evenly matched game, and it was actually 13-6 with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and the Bengals kind of exposed the secondary of the Raiders, which we've seen happen in a number of times this season, particularly those games against the Chiefs. But what we have seen over the past month is a defense that has come together, and whilst they gave up a lot of points last week against a strong Chiefs offense for large parts of that game, they played very well. The momentum is there. I know like the Bengals are coming into the playoffs and people are talking very highly of them, and it's a kind of a way as if the game isn't evenly matched, but when you look at the stats of the teams, passing 6th against 7th, total offense, it's 14th against 15th, defense 16th against 18th. They're quite evenly matched. And I could see why, I could certainly see the argument as to the Bengals win with Chase and with Burrow. But the 3 games this season in which the Bengals have lost at home, they've turned the ball over quite a few times in the game. The Browns, the 49ers, the Chargers, and mainly because Burrow was under pressure for large parts of that game because the offensive line didn't stand up. And that's why I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think they're defensively have really improved over the past month to arguably one of the best in the league in their stats-wise. And I think we're going to see an upset. I think the Raiders have something going. I don't think it's going to mean they're going to go to the Super Bowl. The players are together. They're playing for that interim coach. I see that it's the first shock of the weekend for me. The Raiders win.
We've talked about it on the show. The Bengals have not won a playoff game since 1990. 32 years. The reality is the Raiders, if I remember correctly, haven't won a playoff game in 18 years, over 18 years themselves. So it's not exactly, not only is it a meeting of 2 quarterbacks in their first playoff game, but 2 franchises that have been starved of playoff success for a long, long period of time. This game has every possibility of being a Bengals blowout. Every possibility. They have put up masses of points. They have a dynamic offense. They're an exciting offense. And they could run riot over a Raiders team that, frankly, at times has blown hot and cold. The only problem with that synopsis is the Bengals have an offensive line that's given up over 50 sacks of Joe Burrow. And on the Raiders, they not only get pressure, they get pressure with just rushing 4. Giving them more options in their secondary. And that 4, as the guys have alluded to, is headed up by a one-man wrecking ball called Max Crosby, who probably hasn't got the attention or love he's deserved. He's one of only 3 players himself to get over 100 pressures in a season. J.J. Watt did it one season, Aaron Donald did it one season, and Max Crosby. That's not bad company to be in. He's maxed with 2 X's only because Vin Diesel had stolen the triple X piece in the past. Is the Raiders offense the most consistent in the world? No. Is their defense the most consistent in the world? No. But for the past 4 weeks, when we talk about living up under pressure, they've not only won and they're in, unlike last season's swoon, they've won by 2 points, 4 points, 3 points, and 3 points. That's playoff pressure of a type. That's dealing with the tight games. And maybe it's the start of something strange and special, and the craziest of crazy seasons ends in a bit of success for the silver and black. I'm wearing the black tonight. I think the line is overpriced regardless. At 5.5 points for the Bengals, it's too much. It's going to be a tighter game than that. And I'm somehow, some way, the Raiders are going to do it.
I want to shout out everybody first off for saying just their comments. We will get them read out as quickly as we can. You can imagine it's a wee bit mad in here tonight, and it's an interesting day on this show. The Irish Raiders Twitter account popped up today, and a warm welcome to you. The more Irish accounts we have, fantastic, and we seem to have 2 new Raiders fans here now that are both that their teams are in the playoffs, and that sounds good. Steve O'Rourke said Brian knows in the comments, so Brian must know. And the rookies with the most receiving yards all time, Jamar Chase second to Bill Roman, Houston Oilers. 1,455 receiving yards. Mark knows too is a live comment that just came in. We will read everyone's comments out as soon as possible. Thank you to Steve-O. It's been longer. It's been a very, very long time since either team here has won a playoff game. The Raiders' last postseason victory came in 2003 when I was in second year in school, a year after Robbie Keane made me cry against Germany. Still in Oakland, they beat the Titans in the AFC Championship game. They would then lose to Tampa Bay, back with the Glazers that year. The team's only made 1 playoff appearance since. Cincinnati actually, Mark, was 1991. The reason I know that, and the reason I know that for a fact, is because I was born that year. That's how long ago that was. Look at me now. I've not much hair left. I've got a beard, and I'm up talking about American football at 10 to 11 at night. But they beat the Houston Oilers. Who are they, Mark? I'm only joking, don't worry. But look, in terms of this season, Vegas finished strong. They done very well to get over last week, and they done well to get to the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. Winning 35-32 against the Chargers last week. Cincinnati had it wrapped up the week before that, winning the AFC North, and last week wasn't that. It didn't really matter, did it, against Cleveland? It didn't really matter last week at all. But this is and let me just get this going. No. It's the me nerves game, because this, honestly, lads, look at both teams. How much, and this, I know this counts for every game, but, Carr in Vegas, the whole situation, what the Raiders have been through this year, the Bengals, the young team, this new, this fresh offense, the way that this team has played all year, so much is riding in this game. It's been 5-6 years, whatever, since both teams have been in the playoffs. They have not been in this situation before, and I think it's going to be intriguing to see how this game plays out, not just at the start, but throughout, because I think nerves are going to play a massive part in it. I am concerned. I think the Raiders have put too much in to get to this point in the season. I think they've exhausted themselves maybe a wee bit, and I don't buy into this whole hype around. I don't think there's something special there. I really don't. And I don't mean this in the bad way, because I'm a fan of a team in the AFC West. I just don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in this situation against the Bengals. And I genuinely think the Bengals offense gets them through the game. And whether that takes Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Mixon, to name 3 players there, to take some 2 or 3 quarters to get through that remains to be seen. But I think the Bengals will, honestly, play their hearts out on Saturday, and I think they'll win this game by at least 7 points. And I want to give Matchbook a shout out, because we've got a special bet with them this week, and plus 5.5 is one in selections. So Mark, thank you very much for that. I'm only joking. I'm taking the Bengals, boys. Picking the Bengals to beat the Raiders.
I'm not concerned about the longevity of a season with the Raiders in terms of the overtime situation, because they played 4 overtime games this season, so they're well capable of managing that situation. They have done all season. Jeff referred to all the various incidents this season for the Raiders. When we had Steve on the show, Steve O'Rourke on the show, we were actually discussing the draft. He said they were in no man's land in terms of where they were selecting. And then they go and select Alex Leatherwood. I would argue all the turmoil started then, because everybody expected him to go in the 2nd and 3rd round. They overcame that. They moved him out of that position. They've overcome a lot this season. There's something happening here.
There's something
Steve
about
O'Rourke
Mary
said,
Byrne, I think you said.
Yeah.
Michael, I was just going to say, anytime I make a game pick, there's always a little angel on one shoulder kind of saying, why didn't you say this? And there's a little devil on the other side saying, you bloody idiot, why didn't you say that? Because it's obviously not going to work. The little devil feels compelled to mention, of course, this is a matchup between the most penalized team in the NFL and the 3rd least penalized team in the NFL. There are no prizes for guessing who the most penalized team in the NFL is, guys. And the much criticized 1st-round pick of the Raiders, Alex Leatherwood, has had, I think, 7 full starts this season. It's quite a number. I think he's the most penalized player for full starts. So, yeah, there are things that can go against them. But on the plus side, you mentioned Joe Mixon. We've talked a lot about the quarterbacks, the passing offense, etc. I'm a huge Josh Jacobs fan, and I think the last few weeks he'd started to be a bit more Miley Cyrus, coming in like a wrecking ball. And I think, therefore, that is an underrated part of the Raiders offense and giving an added dimension to it. And equally, they've actually had the tightest run defense in the NFL over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Bear in mind, one of those weeks was against Jonathan Taylor and the Colts as well, only conceding 75 yards in total per game. So that is a counterpoint to the power and the opportunity, obviously, of Joe Mixon. Still comes down to the O-line versus D-line. Anyway, just to share those.
And shout out to Michael Grimes, to Owen Farrell, who says Jeff is a legend, to Neil Logan, Owen Thomas as well, I think I said that already, Ryan Young, Declan Garen. Steve O'Rourke says boo. Ray Murph says column, the tennis racket is the business. And BP Flynn says Joe will sling it and the Raiders can't cover the triple threat. And I just want to say very quickly here, I'm looking at you Bengals fans, I have not jinxed your team. Do not tweet me tomorrow night if you lose saying that I've jinxed it. I want the Bengals to win. I think this team is a promising team. And by God, I need the Bengals to go through the AFC playoffs badly. So please, I have not jinxed your team. We love your support. We appreciate your support. The Bengals are going to win against the Raiders on Saturday.
Michael, I don't mean to bring it up, but in our regular season picks, because we picked every single game in the regular season, the whole season long. I mean, I know I won it comfortably, so I'm not bringing up for that. But how many games were you behind? I'm just wondering, how many jinxes did you deliver?
I was in my defense, I wasn't that far behind a lot of people. I wasn't. You just play the safe every week, Mark. Let's be honest. Anyway, pick King. Let's get to the next game then, because if you're so confident, let's get to the next game. And I wonder who Mark's gonna pick here. The New England Patriots.
Michael, you were asking. Someone referred to Column's tennis racket. Did you pick that one up? Did you get that joke?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry for reading it out.
Thank
you for your comments. Yeah, very, very, very good one. Buffalo Bills, AFC East champs against the AFC East second team. It's an AFC East derby, whatever you want to call it. Shamrock Rovers against Bohemians, Linfield and Torn, Cliftonville against Crusaders. Welcome to everyone watching tonight. Colin, who have you got?
So only 6 rookie quarterbacks have won their first playoff start. And of the 6, only 4 have beaten a veteran quarterback in their first start. And of the 4, only 2 have won on the road. Those were 1, Joseph Flacco. It's not my job to teach anyone anything. And Mark Butt-Fumble Sanchez. Quite something that those 2. But then Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl, having beaten the Broncos with a moment of magic at Mile High that I'll never, ever get over as long as I live. But that is essentially what Matt Jones is looking to do. He's looking to join those 2 and make it a trilogy in a trilogy. And I suppose to do that, he is going to be essentially leaning on the Patriots' defense and the rushing game, because when you look in terms of rookies winning, what you need a top 5 scoring defense, and you essentially need a top 5 rushing offense in order to win. So that is what the Patriots are going to have to do. I think they're essentially going to almost have to play a perfect game, or certainly a mistake-free game. I think it's going to be very physical. Now, up to maybe the last game, I felt the Bills could be bullied a little bit. I thought you could bully them. They showed in the last game that they stood up and they were there to be counted. And the issue for the Patriots is they're missing so many. They had 13 players listed as questionable. Obviously, some of those will make it, but some of them won't. Some of them will be carrying knocks that will be more serious than others. I am really fascinated to see what way Belichick will approach this in terms of defense, because Josh Allen was brilliant in the second game. It was probably his best game of the season. He really kind of put the Bills on his back. And I think that's essentially what this comes down to. It's all going to go through Josh Allen. The weather, they're all talking about it. It'll be a factor. It'll be cold. I don't see how the cold is going to affect either the Patriots or the Bills. It's not the ridiculous 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts that we saw in game 1. I can make a case for the Patriots. I really can, and how they can do it given the coaching staff that they have. But I think given how beat up they are, given that they have the rookie QB, given that the Bills are at home, I think all signs point to the Buffalo Bills winning it and moving on.
Yeah, the 33 points they put up in Foxborough a couple of weeks back. They've been 13 of the 17 games this season. The Bills' offense has put up 25 or more points. It's hard to see a situation, unless we get similar kind of adverse weather conditions to what we saw that game on the Monday night, where the Patriots can live with them. But playoff comes around and Bill Belichick finds a way to address what he saw a couple of weeks ago. And the problem for me right now, the Patriots don't seem to be going into this game with any momentum and form. I know form goes out the window to a large part when it comes to playoffs because they're in. That's all you want to be. You want to be in the dance. But the Bills are going in the right direction. Like, they've won 4 in a row. That game the week after that difficult loss to the Patriots, you'd argue they could have won. They came back really well in that second half. And we touched on the show that, once they didn't win that game, they would have taken great confidence from that game, potentially go on a run, leading them towards the playoffs. And right now, that's what we're seeing from them. They're on a run. They win this game. I think, depending on the result on Sunday Night Football, they'll go into Kansas City, where they've won already this season. Mac Jones had a great season, but I just think this is a step too far from him. Over the last few weeks, I think he could have regressed, and we're starting to see a rookie to a certain extent, dealing with difficult things and injuries around the team. I just think it's too big of a step for this team against a team that were arguably one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Where Belichick has lost to a team in the playoffs, and then in the regular season, and he's faced them in the playoffs that same season, he's lost 5 times in a row. So I think it's going to be 6 times in a row this weekend. Bills from me.
Colin said he could make an argument as to how the Patriots can win this game. Unfortunately, I don't think I can. We're talking about a rookie quarterback in a playoff game. Since 2010, a rookie quarterback is 0-6, straight up. Like, they don't win playoff games. Patriots have just announced Isaiah Wynn, our starting left tackle. Oh, one of those might be useful to have healthy and in full fitness. No, he's out, so there's going to be a shift along the line. What about that wonderful Patriots secondary? Oh, J.C. Jackson, all-pro season, going to get a big payday in free agency. His kryptonite is Stephon Diggs. He locks down nearly every player in the NFL, but Stephon Diggs runs right over him. The last time they played, Buffalo played man. Mac Jones had a woeful game, 14 for 32 for 145 yards. Collins alluded to the various players being injured. Christian Barmore, a standout second-round pick on the D-line, is one of those that's really likely to be out, and that could have a big impact. I watched, obviously, every play of the last Buffalo-New England game. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills just went up and down at will. In Foxborough, it wasn't even close. It never looked like the defense was going to get a hand on them. So when people say, Mark was right to be afraid, but last week, I'm terrified. I would have much preferred a matchup against the Bengals, where I think actually the Patriots would have matched up far better. The Bills have by far the greater talent pool, by far the greater scheme. Sean McDermott has schemed very well against the Patriots, and he's not afraid of Bill Belichick, and indeed has won a number of key games. But here's where I channel a little bit about the Battle of Thermopylae and Phil Collins. Because in the Battle of Thermopylae, if you might remember, made famous by the movie 300 featuring Jared Butler, and we know we've got a couple of good fans over in Scotland there, thinking of Scott and Danny in particular. Jared Butler at one point announces when Sparta are defending their region, this is Sparta. Well, this isn't Sparta. This is the New England Patriots, and there is always a way. And the problem with the Battle of Thermopylae is they still lost. The 300 were actually overran eventually. So I'm not going to remain, only hope on that. I'm going to bring back the greatest musician of the 1980s, mainly because his songs work for me in this context. Phil Collins. Bill Belichick doesn't need to be in the Hall of Fame. There is no jacket required. The Patriots will somehow, some way, against all odds, show their true colors and find a way through. And if you remember that great song about another day in paradise, and the playoffs are paradise, guys. It's always another day. But about halfway through the third quarter, the tension will be building. There'll be this atmospheric music. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the drums will come out and they'll go do 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 do. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. The Patriots somehow, some way, will have another day in paradise and beat the Buffalo Bills.
And then he woke up. Right. I'm so sorry.
You gotta admire your love for the team, Mark, because
This disgrace.
You
And he
just
picked the
called
Bucks
out.
next week.
you just called out so many injuries.
Yeah, are we not literally 4 minutes on from Mark going, Colm says that he can see a way the Patriots can win. Not a chance. And then Mark going, oh yeah, I can see a way the Patriots can win.
I think it's love over.
It's all the build-up. It's the anticipation for you, Colin.
This is a 6th seed Patriots team visiting Buffalo. Forget about the weather. I don't care if it's cold. I don't care if it's freezing. I don't care if it's hot. I don't care if it's raining hailstones the size of my head. This is the first time the Patriots are going into a playoff game since 1998 that doesn't have Tom Brady at quarterback. Now, just to make that clear to anybody that is watching this or even listening to this, the last time that happened, Frank Mitchell was still presenting school around the corner. I was 7 years old. So this is a big, big thing. The Buffalo Bills, as Brian have rightly said, are on a run. They are. The Patriots, I've picked against the Patriots in recent weeks. Sorry, I've picked for the Patriots in recent weeks in the hope that I've jinxed them. And I'll give my pick away in a minute and I'll talk about the reasons for that. But look, Mac Jones, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, is making his postseason debut. This is a young, up-and-coming Patriots team. It's the 4th ranked defense in the NFL. Loads of Pro Bowlers that held the Bills in Buffalo, I think 6 weeks ago now, and everyone was, oh, geez, Lord Jesus, there's a fire. This Patriots team is the second coming. The ESPN the next morning were talking about them as if they were incredible, and fair play to them. They done amazingly well. Well, let's be clear. Bill Belichick had a master plan against Buffalo in the cold, but it wasn't just the cold, it was the snow, and we were talking about it for hours beforehand. There will be, and I've seen the comments, it will be very cold at kickoff tomorrow night. Mac Jones threw 3 passes in Buffalo 6 weeks ago. Hopefully he can throw 4 or 5 tomorrow night. But in all seriousness, so sorry. Can Josh Allen keep it going? Can he? I don't really care. He has to. It's put up or shut up time for the Bills. They have enough offensive weapons. They have enough weapons to stop a rookie quarterback. No harm to the crack. They have enough to stop this Patriots team. Forget about the Patriots. Forget about their frankly very good defense. If the Bills don't win this game, they only have themselves to blame. I think it'll be a low-scoring affair. I'm going to take the Bills to win 21-10. But my God, if they don't win this game, I mean, questions will have to be asked, because this team can sit here and it's fantastic for that fan base that they've won 2 divisions in a row. 2 years in a row, and it was great that they had the chance to celebrate with their fans last week or the week before. Was it 2 weeks ago? But nobody cares less now. It's put up or shut up time for Buffalo, a team that's never won the Lombardi Trophy. Go out and beat the Patriots for all of us, for the love of God. Hallelujah, please, please. Please.
I'm sorry, I tried to maintain my neutrality, but Michael, thank you for inflicting the curse on Buffalo. I appreciate it. Thanks, mate.
There's comments about Phil Collins there. Well, first off, BP Flynn says game time temperature minus 15 degrees Celsius, minus 23 wind chill factor, more like against all odds. There was a comment from a celebrity this week about Josh Allen and what he should do. I'm not going to repeat it on air. Google it. Jess Steed says take me home is another Phil Collins hit. Bill Belichick will be wishing he was at home by the 3rd quarter. Owen Farrell says bloody hell, Mark. Declan says Mark was right to be afraid last week. Bill's going to smash the Pats. Let's just keep her easy. I might go to the early mass tomorrow night, and I'll say a prayer for every non-Patriots fan. Anyway, any final comments? Not game.
I think despite what people are saying about the weather conditions, and they can say, oh, the Bills will have rain from the first time around, the reality is, if the Pats get up to steam, and make the Bills play from behind if it suits Patriots perfectly. Josh Allen does struggle in adverse weather conditions. We've seen it. He didn't play well in the first game. His longest throw, I think, was 26 yards in that game. But, okay, Mac Jones didn't have to show it, but he didn't show it. He didn't have to show it. But look, people can say the weather conditions aren't going to be an impact. They are going to be an impact in the game. That's the reality.
Brian, but that was a storm. Like, that was 60, 70 mile an hour gusts.
It's hardly pristine weather tomorrow night, is it?
Buffalo should be used to that. Josh Allen should be training that all year round. Look, I agree with what you're saying to an extent, but they have no excuses. The ball stops tomorrow. It doesn't matter if they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. It doesn't matter if they're playing a college football team. They have to win this game. They have to. Like, if they don't win this game, where does Buffalo go from here? Seriously, after the last couple of years, they have to
go
win.
to the draft. But
well, yes, of course, and every team that doesn't win it, and even the team that does win it, does that. Picks 32nd. Right, we've 3 more games.
You say where do they go from here if they don't win this game? I agree with you, because the expectation going into the season was to go to the Super Bowl. So even if they were to lose next week and got past the Patriots this week, and they lose in Kansas City, for example, assuming the Chiefs take care of business on Sunday Night Football, there's still going to be a level of disappointment. To see this team is good enough to win a Super Bowl in their eyes.
Yes,
absolutely, Brian. But that's what your jersey stands for as well. Your jumper, it's next year. So for 6 of the team this weekend, it's going to be
all right. No, here
we can have so many memes on this one tonight.
We have 3 more games to look at for the Sunday games. Eagles at Bucks, 49ers at Cowboys, Steelers at Chiefs on the Irish NFL show. Super Wildcard Weekend. This show is presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. £20, €20 welcome offer. Money back as cash if your first bet loses. The code is Irish NFL show. If you go to the Matchbook website or app, we have got a special bet, which we will talk about towards the end of the show. Before we bring a special guest on, Orange Shots is coming onto the show. And we have also got a number of different things coming up this week. We're very, very proud to be presented by Trust Gaming as well, proud partners of the Irish NFL show. Okay, so we're going to look ahead to the next game. The next game is, well, Mark's second team. It's the Eagles going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm never going to tire that, Mark. Until the day that man retires, I'm going to call it your second team. And a nice game. Colin, presented by Trust. Who have you got going into this game on Sunday, the 6 o'clock game?
Well, Mark is right when he talked about this game earlier. Nobody really is giving the Eagles a chance. I believe this in terms of the betting. The Bucks are due to win by the most, whatever way the terminology, Brian, you can educate me around that. And you can see why. Defending champions, we talked about it, bringing their players back, bringing the coaching staff back. They beat up the Eagles earlier in the year. But I think it'll be a closer game than maybe a lot of people think, because back in that game, we talked about Zach Taylor having his Damascus moment. Nick Sirianni, nobody had a more Damascus moment than Nick, because in that first game, running backs had 9 carries, and they had so it was a totally different thing. Also back then, the Bucks were the number 1 in run defense. They were 55 yards per game, 3.4 yards per carry. In the 12 weeks since then, they're 16th in yards allowed per game and 28th in yards per carry. So they have regressed, and the Eagles have gotten a whole lot better at running the football because they've allowed to do that, and their O-line has gotten healthy. And they are a serious unit. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it actually hinges on Levante David. I think how fit he is will be huge, because they have looked, much better when he's in there. And I think that's going to be really important. But how fit, and Jeff talked about that, how fit will Shaq Barrett be? How fit will JPP be? How fit is playoff Lenny? They've got to put them all out there, because they're already short-handed, given Godwin is out, given Antonio Brown is out. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not going to bet against Brady in the playoffs. But I think the Bucks will win, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. And I genuinely can make a case how the Eagles could win, but it would require absolutely everything to go their way. I don't think that will happen. So the Bucks march on.
We're talking about adverse weather conditions. Did you call that out for this game, Colin? Did you recognize it's supposed to be a downpour on Sunday in Tampa, and it's going to be a sloppy, muddy affair? And I guess that would suit the Eagles because they're number one run offense in the league against a number one passing league. But how the weather doesn't kind of lead to teams wanting to throw the ball down the field. But I can't get over the fact that this Eagles team haven't beaten any team. They played 6 teams this season that are in the playoffs, I beg your pardon, with a winning record, and not one of them have they beaten because they've only beaten abject teams, and that's the reason that they're in the position that they're in. So for me, Rats in Philadelphia will be, as Jeff called them, will be on their way home with a difficult loss on Sunday because despite the adverse weather conditions, I think Brady will have a comfortable day, and I think the Bucs will win and cover that line, which is 8.5 points, as we've referred to earlier in the show.
Brian, you snuck in there. I was about to bring up that one myself. I mean, we mentioned the Raiders earlier. There was one great one about the Raiders as well. I think 6 walk-off wins, which is the most in NFL history the Raiders have had. But the Eagles, with their, very strange record in relation to it, as Brian alludes to, have not beaten a side with a winning record. And I think we called it about 8 weeks out. They had a very favourable schedule to finish the season. It looked like they built up momentum. Nick Sirianni, as Colin alluded to, had his Damascus moment and suddenly realised, actually, no, Baltimore North is the way of this team and will play to Jalen Hurts' strengths, will play to the strengths of his roster. A very talented, let's face it, running back core in terms of the various different runners he has there. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, etc. Howard, obviously, for a bit more of a power game. So they've got talent, but they've, nobody's steaming into playoffs, maybe with the exception of the Packers and things. But the Eagles definitely had an easy road in the last while. They've beaten the teams you expect them to beat. They've lost to the teams you expect them to lose to. But looking at this game, the injuries do concern you if you are backing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially a line, I think it's running about -8.5 column. So over a touchdown, the bookies are expecting Tampa Bay to win this game by. If you're missing or injured 3 linebackers, you're relying upon a banged up running back who's just coming back because your other key running back is out, and you still don't know who your third receiver is. You can try and play pitch and catch with Mike Evans and Gronk all day long, but at some point you might actually have to throw the ball to someone else, and you certainly have limited options in that regard. I think overall the Bucs just have that touch too much more talent. So much as I can really, really see a way in which the Eagles win this game, I'm not bold enough to call it for them, I'm afraid. But this is, it's been a bit, joking a little bit with Jeff, trying to rile up a little bit of a discussion about it. But, if the Eagles control the ball, if the Eagles can get the Bucs into difficult situations, they absolutely can win this game. Absolutely. So I've got the Bucs, but a lot closer than a lot of people are anticipating.
I was just trying to make a balance.
Hang on, I've got YouTube music on here. I'll just play some random songs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is in reference to a team that is playing in the game that we are referencing live on the Irish NFL show, presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange and Trust Gaming. The Philadelphia Eagles are a team, a bit like me. They start off bad, they get better going through life. That is, for me, I'm just thriving in my 30s now. Started the regular season 3-6. Actually had a 28-22 home loss in October against the Bucs, but Jalen Hurts, gentlemen, over 3,000 passing yards, 700 rush yards, 10 plus rush TDs in this season. I want to thank NFL Communications for that data, and I also want to thank a bit of the game tape that I watched this week. I like the Eagles. The question is, have they got enough to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I mean, there was a comment there. I think Brian, just from my memory is gone tonight, but I think you said about the weather, and well, they're playing Tom Brady, so it shouldn't really matter if Tom Brady doesn't have eyesight anymore, or if he hasn't got the mobility in his arms or legs. He should be able to win because he's the greatest of all time. So, you know, in that sense, look, I'm impressed with Sirianni. I'm impressed with how the Eagles get on. But this game will come down to Brady, and can he get his top targets continuously in this game? Obviously, Godwin's out after having an SCL injury. It's down to Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski. Both of them have combined for more than 42% of Tom Brady's passing yardage in the last 3 games. It's all on Brady. If Brady doesn't win this, bye. But they will win this. They'll win this by about 7 to 10 points. And hopefully it's a decent game, because this is his first game on Sunday. And I know already somebody's going to screen grab me saying bye that way. But bye-bye to the Eagles in a nice way. I would love it if the Eagles won this game. I would absolutely... That's my Kevin Keegan moment. I would love it if the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just can't see it. I'm intrigued to see how they're going to go next year. And I can't wait till I'm back in Brian's bunker guessing who's going to win the NFC East in 2022.
Well, Michael, I mean, you know, Tom Brady is only playing in his 46th playoff game, so it's unusual. There are things older than him, but like he has played in more playoff games than he's had birthdays. And I think that's more than, if I'm remembering correctly, 26 or 27 franchises have had in their entire existence. So, you know, even if he loses it, does it affect the fact that he's the greatest football player of all time? No.
Michael, you referred to that game. Sorry, Mark, I thought you were done. You referred to that game when it was 28-22 earlier in the season. As I said on the Bengals-Raiders game, I went to the trouble of looking back at the games of the season where they played. For 3 quarters, the Bucs were up by at least 14 points every quarter. Garbage. If you ever wanted a game which you call garbage time touchdowns, that's your game.
The game is the game. You score when you score.
As Bill Hardy would say, come on now, Eamon. Come on now, Eamon. Come on, Eamon.
The game, if you were to look at that scoring...
Come on, Eamon.
Sorry, Mark.
And that game actually was interesting from an analytical point of view, because it's one of the rare games where a team did the right thing when down by 2 touchdowns, which the Eagles did.
Big thanks to the over 3,000 people that have either listened or contributed tonight. Let's check the chat out 2 seconds before we go on. Jason McDonnell is saying Brian, do you want to read this one out?
I can't say it on my screen. My screen's going to be funny.
It says, fly, Eagles, fly. Come on, lads, make a case for the Eagles beating TB and TB. Kevin Keegan moment. It hurts time to fly, Brian. And the cat.
Well, Leco's only trying to wind me up. I know where he's out there now. I just want to say one more thing. This doesn't fill me with any joy. Watching Tom Brady beat the Eagles, or Eagles beat Tom Brady. Like, there's no winner in my world on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock.
Sorry, I have to come back. I remember watching the Super Bowl Eagles Patriots, I suppose the infamous for me 40-32 Eagles victory, and the only person that was more hurt that night than me was Brian O'Leary. With every single second of the game, it didn't matter what was happening. If someone scored a touchdown, it was like he was depressed. If someone else scored a touchdown, he was depressed. It was highly amusing, to be honest.
If the Eagles win on Sunday, I will create an intro for Monday Night Show of me running from Belfast City Hall doing the Rocky theme music. I will do it. That's how much I want this to happen. I'll be very, very happy.
I hope those steps are icy.
Adrian, come on, boys. Come on, Jalen, do it for the crack. There has to be an upset somewhere, and maybe it might come in the next game. Look, decent enough game. It's all right. Like, you know what I mean? It's just the 49ers against the Cowboys. What a game. What a game. I can't wait to see your picks for this, because this surely now is where we all don't agree and stuff. Well, we haven't agreed all night in a couple of games, but Colin, Jerry Jones is a man that's getting on in years. How would he feel if, well, he's like in his late 70s, Mark, come on, he is. Like, and he hasn't seen his team win a Super Bowl in how many years?
I just love the way you so delicately put it, Mike. I was like, he's getting on a bit.
Let me, and I apologize. I mean that in a very loving way for Irish Cowboys fans and for Cowboys fans in the UK, Europe, and the world. Colin, Jerry Jones has put the money on the table. This Cowboys team can really do no more apart from go and win this thing. How would he feel early Monday morning if they lost to the 49ers, one and done in the playoffs? the Dallas Cowboys. This is surely the year. They're talking about a backup Super Bowl location. I mean, oh dear.
Well, I think Jerry made it very clear this week that he expects to win the Super Bowl. The problem for Jerry is, and if you want to talk about the Eagles and the teams they have and haven't beaten, this Cowboys team, since they came back, they beat the Patriots. They then went on a bye, and my goodness, have they struggled since that point. The only playoff team that they've beaten since their bye is the Eagles backups. So at their best, this Cowboys team can be fantastic, and we know what they can be capable of, but can they actually do it on the biggest stage? Can they do it against an opponent who isn't going to allow them have their way? That's what they need to show. And this will be an interesting one, because essentially the Cowboys have Dak and have the wide receivers to take advantage of the defensive weaknesses of the 49ers on deep passes. And you might see Dak throw it up for DPI calls. Let's see what happens there. But equally, the 49ers are kind of set up to exploit the Cowboys' weaknesses. So I think this will be a really fascinating game to see how both teams approach it. And you've got a team, I suppose, in the 49ers who've kind of come into form at the right time. I mean, they've gotten better in the second half of the season. They have their foibles. We know about Jimmy G. We know about his issue in terms of throwing interceptions, particularly over the middle. And I imagine what you'll see the Cowboys do is to look to get him to do that. If you can get Jimmy under pressure, that's when he has issues. Now, he came up big against the Rams last week. But I imagine you'll see lots of interesting things from the 49ers. The Cowboys, all the talk is obviously around Mike McCarthy and what will happen and the coordinators. But for me, couple of interesting things on this. Trent Williams has no injury designation, so will play, which will make a huge difference. Nick Bosa that'll be interesting to see how he does. Micah Parsons. But ultimately, I was listening to the Mina Kimes podcast, and she had a great stat. The Dallas defense allows 6.1 yards per carry to teams using motion, so which is the third worst in the NFL. San Francisco uses motion on their designated runs on 46% of those, which is the most in the NFL. I think the 49ers are going to break Jerry's heart. I am going to go with the 49ers to win this one.
Bow.
See, I don't know. It's a big shock. That's the thing. You look at the line; it's 3 points. It's not a significant. It's one of the smallest lines of the weekend. It's arguably the best playoff game of the weekend. I would say it's probably the one that stands out the most in terms of the one I'm really looking forward to see. Colin referred to the 9 has been informed. You're correct in the way they've won 7 in the last 9. But what concerns me over the past few weeks is first half in both in the last 2 games. They haven't been in the games whatsoever. They didn't score last week in the first half. They were 17-0 down at halftime. They only scored 3 points in the first half the week prior to that against the Texans at home. They won comfortably in the end. But for large parts of that game, they stuttered. Kittle hasn't had a 30-plus yard game in the last 3. He was hitting 90s, 100s average when they went into Cincinnati and Seattle, and he was putting up huge numbers. They've fallen off the cliff. Yeah, defensively, they've really improved. You look at the first 10 weeks of the season, they were giving up 26, 27 points a game, only 5 takeaways. Since then, they've brought it down to 17 points on average, and they've had 15 takeaways. Seriously improved. Columns touched on the flaws on both sides. Run defense situation against the secondary of the 49ers. And where I think is which one is the bigger concern? And for me, that's the 49ers. And if they don't turn up in the first half like they haven't done the past 2 weeks, this game will get out of hand if that Cowboys offense, which once has been a bit sporadic of late, probably no harm in what they did last week in terms of putting up those 50 points, but have got their confidence back. So I'm confident on the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are the better team, have had a better season. The 49ers have stuttered their way into the playoffs. I think the Cowboys on Sunday will win. I wouldn't say win well, but they'll win by 7 to 10 points. He's on mute.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for unmuting me, Michael. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I heard noise and I thought, you know what, I'll mute him just in case he was swearing about the Cowboys. But even worse than the swear, Brian O'Leary, as I run away for a second, just said he's confident on the Cowboys. Mark, please take over.
Yeah, I understand Brian's confidence in one respect, but I think people have to be careful about overconfidence here. The 49ers have a very, very good running game. If Jimmy G performs like he has done in some games, making the throws, and we've talked about it, like the offense isn't that complicated in some respects. Get the ball in your playmakers' hands, get the ball in Kittle's hands, get the ball in Samuel's hands, make the throws we know he can make on third down. That offense can take on anyone. And that offense then can control the clock and they can control the game. I mean, this isn't just an amazing throwback game. I mean, I could come out with all the 90s references you like, I think, in relation to referencing this game. This is a real clash of styles today. And to me, it's the game of the weekend. It's going to be an awesome game because I honestly have flip-flopped on my call on this game about 10 times over. Ultimately, for me, and we could talk about so many different angles of it, the San Fran pass rush and the defensive line that hadn't been performing and suddenly has got life in recent weeks. The Cowboys front seven that we were lauding all over the place. I mean, Randy Gregory coming back, Lawrence, obviously the wonderful Micah Parsons, somehow stopped turning up for a couple of games. And they could just switch it on again and absolutely terrorize Jimmy Garoppolo, shut down the run game, and we're all thinking, how could we both so silly? This is an absolute cakewalk from the Cowboys. Ultimately, I keep coming back to just how bad that San Francisco secondary is on deep balls. Just how many deep defensive pass interference calls we've seen. And this Cowboys offense has the playmakers, has the person ready to give them the deep ball. Basically, you want the ultimate 90s reference on this? This boils down to that scene in Home Alone. Kevin McAllister's waiting for the robbers to come to his house, and he cocks a shotgun and he looks in the camera and says, "This is it. Don't get scared now." As long as Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott channel their inner Kevin McAllister and don't get scared on the play calling or going for the big plays, I think that is going to be the big difference in this game. And therefore, I have the Cowboys winning out. But in due deference to Owen and all my friends in Santa Clara and stuff like that, I can absolutely see the 49ers winning this, but Cowboys.
I was taken back during the week by how many people were favouring the 49ers. It was like as if the first half of that game last week never happened. I mean, we've criticised the Rams on Monday's show about how their second half, they were non-existent and allowed the 49ers back into the game. But if the Rams had been taking care of business and not got complacent, that second seed would have been wrapped up and the 49ers would have been sitting at home. I didn't see that one. They're flying up it's like watching the CFAX back in the day trying to get the football results coming through.
Airtel. Really? I mean, yeah, both. I mean, I had the option of both. Airtel, yeah. Wasn't it Airtel?
Deco, I know Declan, who's obviously Dolphins fan, has been very critical of Dak throughout the season. He doesn't rate it. It's a big one for Sunday. Just a big one on Sunday for Dak. I mean, get over a hurdle and take the pressure off.
I agree. I agree completely. And I really have enjoyed not just your free previews of this game, but also Jeff's analysis of this game and hearing about communism and just everything. It's been incredible. Mark, I can't wait to meet your friends in Santa Clara, Palo Alto. Stopped off in Palo Alto once at the train station. I felt like I was in a different world completely. Levi Stadium's lovely, but the game isn't in Levi Stadium. The game is in a multi-purpose built stadium that's only hosted the Super Bowl once in the last 10 years. And the Dallas Cowboys, the last time they won a Super Bowl, TG Carr hadn't even launched. So I'm looking forward to previewing this game tonight. Look, these are two of the NFL's incredibly important signature franchises. 10-7 49ers, Cowboys 12-5. They have had epic battles over the years, especially in the 90s. Unfortunately, I didn't have the experience of that. I tried to watch a bit of it back this week, and all I can really say is Deion Sanders is an absolute and utter legend. What a man. Incredible. But look, it's really been that since like Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. Let's get away from that right now. But look, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we've already done that. It goes down to a number of different factors for me. Can the 49ers offense actually keep the play away from Dallas? I mean, this really, boys, the offense this week needs to do well. They have to show up in the first half, as Brian says. You need to see a combination with Mitchell and Samuel and a confident Jimmy Garoppolo from the offset here. George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk's role in this game is going to be key. They need to make big plays that keep the team moving down the field. If they don't, the Cowboys will get the advantage throughout this game, and it's not going to happen for them. But I think the key to this game is the Dallas offense. Is this going to be the Cowboys team that just goes in and doesn't show up on the biggest stage of them all? Because this is probably the biggest Cowboys game in a very, very, very long time. Maybe since the Green Bay game, where maybe Des Bryant caught it, he didn't catch it. It is because, and I know it's the. Oh,
he'll be back.
Just going to leave that there in case he does fall out. I'm going to put Mark on mute just in case. Thanks, Mark. What was I saying? I was saying, it's the most important game for Dallas in so many years. And part of me thinks they're going to struggle. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott, that maybe he doesn't have enough breakfast, or maybe he has too much breakfast and can't feed on it for the game. Pollard's going to be crucial, as we say every week in this year. But the 49ers defense, if they're trying to get a win in this game, they need to step up. D'Amico Ryans, who's DC in San Francisco, needs to put some sort of game plan together. And Nick Bosa could really, you're talking about Ezekiel Elliott, Nick Bosa could feed on this Cowboys team at the weekend. Let's see what happens. I think it'll be a tight game. Mark's computer has died. He's just let us know, folks, and he'll get back on as soon as possible. Don't worry. But I don't think people are going to like this. I don't think that Dallas Cowboys fans are going to like this. I'm going with the Cowboys. I think I have been weighing this up all week because the way the 49ers came back last week in a home game in California was stunning television. I think the Cowboys win in overtime in a game that we'd watch back in years to come. And I think the Cowboys will go to Lambeau Field, and we'll talk about that when it happens. And Cowboys fans, I haven't jinxed you. Nobody's jinxed you. We want you to do well here, including Brian, who's picked you this week.
It's we touched on Dak and how important this game is for him, getting over the hump. But it's a significant one for Jimmy G, because at the end of the day, Jimmy G faces the reality that there's, whether the quarterback is good enough or not, at some stage the 49ers will have to make that transition into Trey Lance and make him the designated starter, and maybe it will be next season. But if the 49ers were to go on a run now, how could you argue he wouldn't be your quarterback next year? If they lose, I think you'll find that some teams will be making a phone call during the offseason to try potentially get him out of there, knowing this is a first round selection ready to step in. Whether he's ready and good enough or not is another thing, but it's a big game for him as well.
Owen's in, come on, Michael picked Niners.
I think he knows he's jinxed it. I think he knows 40 years since the catch, and we're going back.
Great to see the NFC East Elite on show on Sunday. I genuinely hadn't read that before I clicked on it. Who will throw more picks, Zach or Jimmy G? May decided they will stop Zeke on the ground. Owen's saying, boo, Michael. Colin has the knowledge. It was a hard decision, Owen. Robbie Gold with the game winner, Niners in a close one. Jared Mullins is saying Jimmy G will be the Broncos quarterback. Declan is saying Zeke going in reverse at the minute. He needs to get his breakfast, Declan, doesn't he? But they'll go Pollard there as well. Let's see what happens. Apparently his knees are shot. Good man, Stephen, Owen said. So look, lads, it's good crack tonight. I think Mark will join us at some point in the next 6 weeks, maybe by the time the Super Bowl starts. I hope you're doing well, Mark. Presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange, presented by Trust Gaming. Before we look ahead at our Matchbook Bet of the week, we're going to look at our final game here. Before we look at Monday Night Football on Monday, it is Big Ben going up against Kansas City Chiefs Mahomes. Goodbye, my friend. Oh, you're going to still find here.
Oh, God.
It's not the end. Okay, anyway. Well, you're talking about the 90s. I had to bring a bit of Spice Girls into it. I thought, because it may be Big Ben's last game, I thought, as my role as chief graphics producer, which is dramatically reduced this week in terms of game picks, thank the thank the Lord. I thought I would put Big Ben at the bottom of it, just so he's there for maybe one last time, Ariana Grande style, talking about music puns and awful puns. Are you here, Mark? This is like the Eurovision back in the 60s. Okay, he's not here. Okay, right. Crack on indeed. Colin, Ben Roethlisberger has had an incredible career, and no matter what happens on Sunday, it looks like it is the end of an era. I have to say, and I'll give my pick later on, Colin. Are you surprised by the lines, by the predictions for this game? Do you think the Steelers aren't being given enough respect, or what's your thoughts on this game?
I have no idea what the line is on this game. That would be a much better question.
They're massive favourites, like maybe like 15, 16
Mr. O'Leary. Well, when you look at the last game between these two, I think that's probably what people are going off. But I think this will be a tougher matchup than perhaps people are thinking, because in the last game, TJ Watt was dealing with that groin issue. He could only play about half of the defensive snaps. He wasn't right, and the Chiefs have issues at right tackle. It looks like it'll be Andrew Wiley, and so that will be interesting. I think they'll have to give him help in order to stop TJ, and so we'll see what happens there. The Chiefs also, Edwards-Helaire is out and Williams is carrying an injury. How fit is Tyreek Hill is the other question. So there are, I think, a huge number of questions around this for both teams. The issue for the Steelers is they're just going to, I think, struggle to score enough points. This is not the Bengals who were able to take advantage of the Chiefs. That is the thing. Can the Steelers win it? Yeah, of course. They have a brilliant coach. They have a wonderful experience. They have TJ. They have, a couple of pick sixes and who knows. But ultimately, I think that Travis Kelce will be hugely important in this game. The Steelers haven't faced Kelce since 2018, and that he went off in that game. 7 receptions, 109 receiving yards, and a pair of touchdowns. I think the Chiefs at home will have enough to get it done, because I just don't think the Steelers will, find a way. They were able to exploit Buffalo's special teams mess up in week 1. I don't see the Chiefs doing that. So this is the Chiefs winning it for me.
2 weeks ago, when the Steelers played the Browns on a Monday Night Football and the Steelers won, and it was Big Ben's last game, afterwards when we touched on the game in our next show, we argued that any other team had went in there on that Monday night, they would have beaten that Steelers because that offense was so poor, and Big Ben was very poor on the night. And I don't think it was much better last week. We saw toughness and we saw grit, and they got through it last week against the Ravens team that we expected to move the ball, because we saw NFL Huntley in the past 4 to 5 weeks when he played. We expected that offense to be a bit more expansive. Didn't materialize, more so maybe because of the Steelers defense. But again, that Steelers offense couldn't move the ball. The Chiefs have played 5 home games in a row where they haven't given up more than 10 points, and they played against much better teams than this Steelers offense. If they come and play the way they played recently at home, the game's over by half time, unfortunately, for the Steelers fans. And look, they've had a hell of a ride, and no one thought they'd be here in the playoffs. So it's bonus time, and they're playing with the bookies' money, as they say. And if they win, it'd be I wouldn't go as far as to say it's one of the biggest shocks in years, but you'd have to put it up there, because you just can't see any way in which they win with that offense and how Big Ben has played recently. It's not like he's elder statesman or Brady and other quarterbacks that we've seen throughout the years, Peyton Manning to a certain extent, where they're still playing efficiently. He's not playing well. He's fallen off the cliff to a large part, and I just can't see how he can match up. The bookie line for them to score points is 16.5 points. The bookies don't even think they'll get over 16 points in the game. That's reflective of where they are. Against the Chiefs offense, that has come back to a little bit of what we saw last year in certain games this season. And going into this game, you'd still expect them to put up 30-odd points. To beat these 26-10 a couple of weeks ago, and they said that was still nice on the Steelers, because it was a very late score in the game. Chiefs are going to win. This is the blowout of the weekend.
We were back in the 90s, and I don't know why TLC, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, springs to mind. And it was kind of like, if you're chasing a rational thought as to how the Steelers will win this game. I mean, it is like chasing a fairy tale, chasing a waterfall in that regard. It's not logical. Like there is nothing in the way the teams have played through 17 games of the regular season, to be really brutally honest with you, that would give you confidence in the Steelers' offense dominating sufficiently to put enough points on to win the game, even though their defense, as we know, has and can be extremely elite and disruptive. The Chiefs have righted the ship from their turnover woes early in the season. Their defense, actually, in locking down a short passing game, is designed. Really, it's a terrible matchup, to be absolutely honest with you, for the Steelers' offense in all kinds of ways. And I would love to just give a kind of, I don't know, eulogy. It almost sounds harsh in relation to it. Ben Roethlisberger has had, should we say, personality flaws. There's been scandal about his career at different times in a personal context. But as a football player, he's served the Pittsburgh Steelers extraordinarily well. He has won 2 Super Bowls. He is a surefire Hall of Famer in Canton. He's had a great career. He has lasted longer than any of that famed class of 2004. And I have just a bad feeling this could be like Dan Marino's final game as a Miami Dolphin. 63-7, I think, if I remember correctly, against Jacksonville, 62-7. It could be ugly in many respects. But it's the 2021 season. We have seen some absolutely bizarre results, absolutely crazy. So wouldn't it be so 2021 to just have something so flip side, upside down in the playoffs? I don't think it will happen. I think the line that Flynn just put up there, Mahomes doesn't even take snap in the fourth quarter, could well come to pass. I see it being the Chiefs all the way.
Yeah, we could have our yearly. Let's see the Chiefs backup quarterback in the playoffs. Looking forward to that. Well, I want to thank Pierce from Belfast. Hi, Pierce. Thank you for the retweets and good luck this weekend. The Chiefs going up against the Steelers in an intriguing game. Look, the only thing I'm going to add here is this. Mark, I used the Spice Girls analogy at the start. Goodbye, my friend. It's not the end. Let's see what happens. I was sitting in work for about 60% of this week going like this, going, could they do it? Well, I looked into it and I thought to myself, and I'll put the message up in a second, don't worry, Ron. I looked into this year, and in the regular season, the Steelers have only scored more than 27 points on some occasions. They scored 27 points against the Broncos. They scored 29 points against the Bears. They scored 28 points against the Vikings and still lost on, I think it was Thursday Night Football. And they scored 26 points against the Browns. That is on a heavy reliance of running the ball and throwing the ball within maybe 5 to 10 yards. Mac Jones' speciality, apart from some lovely class plays 2 weeks ago. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing his potential this week and next year. But looking back at the Steelers, this Chiefs team, and look, I'm picking the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will win. But this Chiefs team, on a number of occasions this year, have found it difficult to start the game in Arrowhead, or they haven't got it together. Now, I know there's games where they have blown out teams. The Raiders game is one. Hell, the Steelers game is one a few weeks ago. But just do not be surprised if what Brian mentioned there, that grit, that determination from the Steelers, maybe holds it off a wee bit. Maybe for the first or second quarter, or maybe we're sitting in the third quarter and they're down by a touchdown. I'm just saying, do not be surprised if Najee Harris can run like Forrest Gump. You never know what could happen. But I think for me, I think the Chiefs are going to roll on, and it's a pity because the Chiefs should have been playing the Raiders this week, as far as I'm concerned. And it is what it is. I'm only joking, Raiders fans. I'm only joking, NFL fans. I'm picking the Chiefs. I think let's see what happens. I don't want to say it'll be comfortable. Well, I do want to say it'll be comfortable just because of our bet next. But if it is Big Ben's last game, we'll see you on whatever Amazon Prime Video's reenactment of the Manning cast is next year. And good luck, mate. Keep her lit. Can't wait to see Mason Rudolph next year. Chiefs for me, but I've got a serious feeling here. Like a really bad feeling about this. And I don't know what it is. Maybe they'll win 100-0, the Chiefs or whatever, but I've got a feeling that maybe Ben Roethlisberger has one last thing up his sleeve. I don't know what it is, but I haven't got the cojones to pick him.
Well, Michael,
That's-
you're saying... Oh, sorry. Go
No,
on.
I was just going to say, if you have the feeling, go for it. I mean, I think the Steelers can stick around, make it a bit more. I don't think it's going to be quite Mark is saying about 62-7. But the Chiefs, if they show up, if they do what they need to do. But they're missing quite a few, and playing Tyreek Hill last week against the Broncos.
I actually have to jump in here now. Declan said it's like top of the pops night. Love it. Mark is Pat Sharp in disguise. I didn't know you top pops in the South, but different conversation. I met Pat Sharp in Ibiza 3 years ago, and I didn't know who he was. And he was chatting away to me, and I texted me like my dad or someone. He's apparently used to be really famous.
Yeah,
Pretty
Yes,
nice.
he-
the
yes,
Fun
yes.
House. Jesus, Michael. Yeah, and the
Fun
mullet.
house. Fun house.
Move on. It's wasted him.
What's Full House?
We still have a guest tonight.
Yes.
Come here, Colin. You're right. The Steelers will stick around because they'll have to be there for 3 hours. You know, that's
Fun
about the
house.
extent of it.
Well, look, Michael, just to wrap up quickly, I mean, like 14 teams left at the end of this weekend. There'll only be 8 and everything. Lots of teams already looking forward to the draft. Lots of teams, the season's over. They're already looking to September next year and everything. So it's the part of the season that we love and they hate, and there'll be tears and there'll be joy. And there's definitely another 90s song I could probably pull out there. Yeah, there we go, Pat Sharp in relation
Did
to
you
it.
have that haircut whenever the 49ers and the Cowboys played each other in the 90s? I have no idea who that is. I have no
If
idea
the
what that is.
Steelers
Before-
win, if the Steelers win this weekend, I suggest either yourself or Mark go out and buy yourself a Pat Sharp wig and wear it on the show on Monday.
I've got the hair, don't worry. I can grow
I'll
it.
wear it because there's absolutely not a chance of that happening.
I always
Right
thought
here.
the dodgiest thing about that was the 2 twins he had presenting with him. It was a very surreal show. Stephen, let's rerun the fun.
let's
Yeah.
put it-
I
Mark,
have no idea what we're talking
Mark,
about. This could be
let's
anything.
put it like this. It's not the kind of stuff that would be on TV in this day and age.
Well, matchbook betting exchange. All right, let's just wait 2 seconds, because if anybody clicks in this video and sees Brian laughing at the start of this, okay. Matchbook betting exchange, proud partners of the Irish NFL show. £20, €20 welcome offer. Use the code Ennis. Use the bonus code Irish NFL show. It's been a long week, boys. T's and C's all below there. 18 plus. Be gamble aware. We have got a bet for the week. And look, it's an interesting bet because it does go with some of our picks. Looking at the wild card games. Brian, do you want to talk us through the bet?
Yeah, well, this is a comprehensive selection across the team, the 4 of us. Well, maybe not Colin. Me, you, and Mark have come to a general consensus of what we believe is the right bet for the weekend. Matchbook have obviously priced it up and enhanced the offer for the customers. And look, we touched on it in the show. Yeah, look, some are going for the Bengals, some are going for the Raiders, but we feel it's going to be a lot closer than the 5.5 points reflects on the line. So that was Mark's selection. You, we all think we're in for a great game Sunday night. We've called out the fact that we think it's the game of the weekend, and over 50.5 points. If both offenses have played to the levels they can, we think it'll go over. And despite the concern around whether you think the Chiefs whether the Steelers will find a way to win or not, I don't believe so. And I don't think majority of the guys here think that either. I think the Chiefs will win comfortably and certainly cover that 12.5. So it's a bit of everything in there for the bet, but it's a great interest for the weekend. I mean, if you get past Saturday night, you've got the game on Sunday at 9:30, leading into a 1:20 a.m. game on Sunday night going into Monday morning.
7.2 odds on the exchange. That's just over 6-1. And Mark, it's an intriguing bet.
Oh, no, it is. And like I say, Brian called out, I mean, my part of it is the Raiders bit. I just think it's overpriced. I think it could be a field goal in it, especially in Raiders' recent form. So you'll take the 5.5 points and enjoy that. And definitely agree with the other 2 legs of it all. So, hey, it's our combined treble. Nice of Matchbook to enhance the odds for us in relation to it, and for all people wishing to put that bet on. And if you disagree with us, well, bet against us and enjoy on the betting exchange there.
Yeah, and a massive thanks to our partners at Matchbook Betting Exchange, partners of the Irish NFL show every week. Really appreciate the support from the exchange. And you can use £20, €20 welcome offer. Money back as cash if your first bet loses. The bonus code is Irish NFL show. All the T's and C's are below. And please be gamble aware. T's and C's apply. And many, many thanks to Matchbook for their continued support of the Irish NFL show. And here is all the details of the bet. You need to get it in, folks, just before the game starts on Saturday for it to count. Okay. Might bring Colin back in. Could have swore I heard a beer bottle there, boy, somewhere. We clickety clank. Hi, Colin. You're all blurry on my side. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, hear you loud
Okay.
and clear.
Well, that's it. It has been a fun house tonight, and that's us for now, I guess. But I don't know what that is, and I want to thank everyone for watching this. We have nearly 4,000 people that have watched us live tonight. For people in the chat, really appreciate it, folks. Flinner, just to finish off here, is saying the last Steelers match before the Russell Wilson era begins. Ooh.
Everybody's going to be linked to him over the next few months. Everybody's dreaming. The Saints will be saying the exact same thing as with many other teams. Interesting.
Indeed.
It's a good fit, though. Good fit.
Absolutely. And really appreciate Jeff Rainbow coming on. Lads, good to chat to you. Get your picks in. I can't wait to see how much we're laughing tomorrow night after these two games. The two games on Saturday, Raiders, Bengals, Pats, Bills, Eagles, Bucks. Thanks for the thumbs up there, Mark. 49ers, Cowboys, Steelers, Chiefs, Cardinals, Rams. We have got a bonus segment with you now. Colin, do you want to introduce our guest? And we will all leave you and wish you a good night to everyone.
Enjoy the games, everyone. Enjoy the games.
Yeah, wonderful series of games. But we were very fortunate this week to speak to Aaron Schatz, the creator of DVOA from Football Outsiders. And in the run-up to the Super Wildcard weekend, it's always good to get somebody who, I suppose, has a really interesting take on the analytics side of the game. And we discussed, I think, a broad range of topics. So it's a really good interview, and I really think viewers will enjoy it. And once again, thanks to everyone who has watched this evening. And we look forward to seeing you live on Monday night. But for now, enjoy the interview.
Enjoy the interview. See you on Monday night, Cardinals, Rams. Enjoy Super Wildcard Week. Good night, folks.
God bless.
Okay, folks, to finish off our Wildcard Weekend show, we are delighted to be welcomed from Football Outsiders and also an ESPN Plus NFL analyst alongside so many more different things as well. Aaron Schatz. Aaron, it's a pleasure to welcome you on to the Irish NFL show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I think this may be the first Irish NFL show that I've done, and I believe that it's now called Super Wildcard Weekend.
It is, and do you know what, Aaron? After designing 15 different things called Wildcard Weekend, I when I realized it was called Super Wildcard Weekend, my heart did sink a little. I'm not going to lie. But, you're very, very welcome. Have you ever been to Ireland before? Have you had the pleasure of being in Dublin or Belfast at all?
I have not. There's some point there's going to be a European trip in my future, but I have not actually been to Ireland.
Well, we would be delighted to welcome you to the Little Green Island. And Michael was, I suppose, mentioning some of the things you've been involved in there. And it's Football Outsiders is what people, I think, on this side of the world will know you best for, and DVOA. And I suppose looking at it, like going back, you did a piece a few years ago on the 30 best teams of the last 30 years. And that 1991 Washington team was top of that. Now, we had the good fortune of speaking to Stink on this show before, and he had lots of stories about the Hogs and his time there. But can you talk to us a little bit from your perspective? What makes that team the best of the past 30 years?
Oh, the thing about the 91 Washington team is that it was so well balanced. They are, I believe they come out in our ratings as one of the top 30 offenses, one of the top 30 defenses, and one of the top 30 special teams units of the last 30 years, which is, I mean, well, more than 30 years at this point. I mean, our numbers actually go back to 1983 now. So we have, including 2021, we have 38 years of data. But that team was just consistent and strong in pretty much every way. And I realized that it was sort of a one-year, wonder they didn't win more than one Super Bowl, but a lot of great teams in NFL history are just one-year things. The 85 Bears only have the one Super Bowl. So, I stick by the 91 Washington team as the best team of all time.
Aaron, you had a recent tweet on DVOA, and in particular around deep passes and how the Carolina Panthers somehow fell into a negative scenario there, and with the baseline of sacks not being included. How rare is that in the season to see that stat come out?
Usually we end up with like one offense per year that's negative on deep passes. So the way it works is for the team DVOA stats, we throw every play in, right? So when you look at just deep passes split out, you're looking at both complete and incomplete passes, but all the complete passes are big gains, and you don't have any of the negative. You don't have any of the like sacks, and you don't have any of the 2-yard passes on 3rd and 15 because you're only looking at deep stuff. So every team is very positive above the baseline. It's really hard to be negative, but Carolina was this year.
Aaron, you've done a lot to promote analytics generally, and to analytics in the football sense. Obviously, recent years you've spoken at the MIT Sloan Analytics Conference, which only seems to have grown and grown in stature. We've been fortunate enough to interview people like Scott Pioli, who've also spoken at that, and he actually commented on just how it's grown in magnitude. The use of analytics across football has grown in magnitude. And I mean, it seems like every NFL team now has an analytics department. Some, we'll come to it, might be using it a bit too much, but we'll come to that in due course. Do you think now everyone, other than maybe Bill Belichick, has found religion and has adopted analytics, and it's here to stay? And in fairness, Belichick adopts analytics.
They've found religion in different amounts, right? I mean, Belichick too has done analytics and has analytics people with New England. The amount to which every team follows the sort of general precepts of what analytics has discovered about professional football does differ from team to team. But there's no question that the league as a whole is understanding the analytics movement much better in the last 4 to 5 years. And we've sort of won. We basically won. If you look at the way that coaches were going for it on 4th and short, that decision, I mean, there's a lot of analytics is anything where you can study data to try to improve the decision-making process. It's not just about 4th downs, but that's the thing we've been hammering on for 20 years. And if you look at the way teams acted this year compared to how they acted 5 or 6 years ago, it's pretty clear that we've won the argument.
Just on that, I remember you and Greg Easterbrook, I used to read on ESPN about 15 years ago, going on about punting on 4th and 1 in the so-called maroon zone, where it's too close for a punt, too long for a field goal, and teams not going for it. And now you don't see them stop. Like they always seem to go for it a lot more regularly.
Yeah, teams at this point are going for most 4th and 1s. Even teams are starting to go for it at 4th and 1, even on their own end of the field. They understand how strong the chance is of converting a 4th and 1, and also how important possession of the ball is. You just do not want to give the ball back to the other team if you can help it. And the odds that you're going to keep the ball on 4th and 1 are pretty strong. Now, obviously, if it's 4th and 1 in your own end and you don't convert, that's a really bad result. But you're going to convert that, 70, 75% of the time. So most of the time, you're going to have a good result. And keeping possession of the ball means keeping the other team from scoring.
Talking about possession, analytics, maybe going for it, or bold strategies. One team that has a bold strategy on Thursday, Aaron, was the Houston Texans getting rid of head coach Culley. What exactly is the strategy in Houston, do you think at the minute? Because it came as a shock anyway for me.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing is, why did they let this poor guy twist in the wind for 3 days, right? Like, why not fire him on Monday like everybody else did? But when they hired Culley, he was somebody who nobody had ever considered as head coach material. And then all of a sudden, here's Houston hiring him. Like, it felt weird when they hired him. So that makes it feel a little less weird now that they're firing him. But it is difficult to see what the strategy is in Houston. The leaders now to be the new head coach are all people with Patriots connections. Apparently, they're, the whole idea that they're Patriots South with Nick Caserio as the general manager. I just feel like that franchise is a mess. The pull that Jack Easterby has with the owner of that franchise is weird. And it's not something I would really want to be involved with.
Yeah, it's strange things happening down in Houston over the last couple of years, and I think we'll continue to see that into this off season. But we are coming into the playoffs, Aaron, and I suppose just before Christmas, ESPN had a long read around momentum and kind of an in-depth investigation into sports' most overused term. But then last week, you had a piece about hot streaks entering the playoffs and whether they matter. Can you talk to us, I suppose, about your conclusions about rust versus rest?
Yeah, they don't really matter. The fact is that if you look back at the last 20 years, is it better to be hot at the end of the season than cold? Yes, it's better to be playing better at the end of the season than playing worse. But overall, it's much more how well you played over the course of the entire season that tends to matter rather than where you particularly cold and especially if you look at just the last 3 or 4 games. Like a lot of people will feel that the Patriots lost 3 of their last 4. They're a really cold team right now. But if you look at the whole second half of the season, they played very well throughout the whole second half of the season. Even the games they lost near the end of the year, they played reasonably well, except against Indianapolis. So in general, it's, you would rather be playing better than worse come the end of the season, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of teams, I always think of the 2008 Arizona Cardinals who went to Foxborough and lost 47-7 in a snowstorm to Matt Castle and the Patriots, the year that Tom Brady was injured, 47-7, and then ended up within a minute of winning the Super Bowl.
One team we're used to seeing in the playoffs is the Baltimore Ravens, and obviously there's a lot of talk recently, in particular on 2 games where they lost, both games where they went for 2-point conversions. The one in Pittsburgh and obviously then the one at home to the Packers. And I suppose, how do you weigh up in-game scenarios versus the analytics? Because the first time around, Jim Harbaugh said we went for 2 points because we couldn't move the ball for majority of the game, and he didn't feel they would move it in overtime. The following time he did it against the Packers, they were moving the ball pretty much the entirety of that second half. But yeah, he went for the analytic decision as opposed to what was actually happening within the game. Are you surprised how that plays out at times?
Well, it's not the analytic decision. Here, the interesting thing about those 2-point decisions is that I believe in both cases, definitely in the case of the Packers game, the analytics model that we use actually favored kicking the extra point and going to overtime, in part because they have the best kicker ever. And therefore, they're more likely to win in overtime on a long field goal that the other team can't try. But when I say that even the model favored kicking the extra point, it was very close. So it really was a gut decision. This was a decision that analytics doesn't tell you what to do. You really have to play based on your gut. And I think what Harbaugh did in going for 2 in both of those decisions got blamed on analytics, but he was really just going with his gut and looking at how injured his defenses were. And he just felt like he could not put his defenses back on the field in overtime, and he had to win it now.
Aaron, I'm going to continue on that thing. So one thing I want to probe with you, actually. I've explained the Monty Hall problem on this show, so I like my maths and my analytics and statistics quite a bit from time to time. But we're talking about Harbaugh. We talk about that decision not to go for it. But I want to rewind a bit, because some of the analytics and statistics have suggested if you're down 14 late in the fourth quarter, you should go for 2. But you should go for 2 on the first touchdown, not necessarily the second. Could you just explain a little bit to viewers where the analytics falls out in that and why that works out more preferable for some of our viewers?
Yeah, so here is how it works. If you go for 2 after the first touchdown and you get the 2-point conversion, all you need is the extra point after the second touchdown to win the game. You don't go to overtime. If you don't get the 2 after the first touchdown, you still have another opportunity to get the 2 after the second touchdown. So basically, 20, if you think of going for 2 as basically a 50-50 proposition, which, it's roughly. 50% of the time, you'll get one of them, which means you'll go to overtime. 25% of the time, you won't get either, which means you'll lose. But 25% of the time, you will win in regulation without even having to go to overtime. So it ends up that you win the game more often if you try for two, the first touchdown. I mean, obviously, in order to make this work, you have to score the 2 touchdowns and you have to prevent the other team from scoring any, which is hard to do.
That's the tricky thing. That's the tricky.
I mean, the Eagles were in this situation earlier this year against the Buccaneers, actually, the first time those teams played. And the Eagles scored the first touchdown and went for 2 and got it. They never scored the second touchdown, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, one of the rare occasions. I feel like, Aaron, you've given, and just to continue on, I mean, we've got the Super Wild Card weekend coming up. You've given Pats fans who might have been hanging from the rafters something to cling on to in the sense of the second half of the season. But there's a couple of games, obviously, where, you know, the DVOA, the analytics that you guys do, the Football Outsiders inputs is really interesting in the sense of some teams might want to look away. For example, if you're the San Francisco 49ers going up against the Dallas Cowboys, you might not want to be aware of your research when it's like, well, don't pass the ball long or hope that the Cowboys don't pass the ball long because the 49ers are a bit susceptible to that. Or indeed, the Pittsburgh Steelers with their short passing game going up against the Kansas City defense. You know, who should be hiding behind the couch, basically, Aaron, and who should be going into this weekend with optimism?
Well, I mean, we're not very high on Pittsburgh's chances against Kansas City. There's a reason that game's got the biggest line. I mean, Kansas City tends to do lower in our numbers than they sort of really are, because when they take big leads in the fourth quarter, they shut it down and play awful. And historically, we found that those numbers are sort of meaningful for the future for most teams, but they may not be for Kansas City. And meanwhile, Pittsburgh is the worst of the playoff teams. They only came out 24th out of 32 teams in our numbers this year. So that one seems really one-sided. Otherwise, I think we are in agreement pretty much with Las Vegas as far as, I don't mean the Raiders, I mean the lines, as far as the home teams being the better teams in all the matchups. But I mean, Dallas was our number 1 team for the year, but San Francisco also is really good in our numbers. And those two teams basically feast on each other's weaknesses, right? Like Dallas wants to throw deep and San Francisco is terrible at stopping that. San Francisco wants to run and Dallas is not terrible at stopping that, but like their great defense is not great against the run. It's only average against the run. So it's like a bad matchup for both teams, which makes it a really intriguing game.
Talking about the 49ers, I'm excited to see what they do against Dallas this weekend. But one team that won't be in the playoffs is the Los Angeles Chargers. And first off, as an analyst and also as an NFL fan, what did you make of that last 2 minutes on Sunday night? Because I was sitting in disbelief, and I think I still am, to be honest with you.
Well, the whole game was disbelief, first of all, because Justin Herbert kept hitting 4th and long after 4th and long after 4th and long. I mean, that game was nuts. Once the Raiders got the ball with 2 minutes left or whatever, I felt like they should just kneel on it and just take the tie and just let's both make the playoffs. But if you think about it, for the Raiders, there was a reason to keep going and try to win the game. And it's not just about sort of ego and like we want to win the game. It's the difference between the 5th seed and the 7th seed. And given the way that they were completely destroyed by Kansas City twice this year, and the way that, you know, most people feel Kansas City is a better team than Cincinnati, no disrespect meant to the Bengals, you would rather be playing the Bengals in the first round than playing the Chiefs in the first round. And so they put themselves in a situation where they could try to win, but were pretty assured not to lose unless Josh Jacobs fumbled the ball. They could give it to Jacobs and run and see if he got enough yards to try a field goal. If he didn't get enough yards to try a field goal, so then, you know, game over, tie, we go to the playoffs. But if he does get in position to try a field goal, you can have better playoff position and kick your rival, the Chargers, out of the playoffs. So I think it was basically just, let's see if we can get the rushing yards. And they did, because the Chargers' run defense is terrible.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat 130 of the 132 yards came after contact, which is quite something for the Chargers defense to give up. But in terms of defense, actually, Aaron, you tweeted recently around the difficulty in picking all-pro safeties, both in terms of the eye test, in terms of stats, and even on video, because a lot of times you don't know the play call, you don't know the responsibility. And so when it comes to that, how do you go about it, and maybe who are some of the safeties who have jumped out at you this season?
It's hard. I mean, you've got, PFF's grading, you've got Sports Info Solutions' points saved metric, you've got some stats that you can look at, but it is difficult to find stats on safeties. It does mean something to me that Buffalo is our number one defense and our number one defense against deep passes. And I think that's they're far ahead of everybody else against deep passes. And I think that speaks well of Jordan Poyer. So in the end, my decision for the All-Pro safety came down to having to pick two out of Derwin James of the Chargers, Kevin Byard of the Titans, and Jordan Poyer of the Bills. I got it down to those three to make my decision as to who to pick, and then tried to figure out with the stats, who I was going with, and a little bit also of like who, when I watched games, who seemed to really jump off when you're deciding on things like the All-Pro team.
14 teams in the playoff. Obviously, haven't looked at the stats of the teams who potentially who are outside looking in. Who do you think going forward? I know we're a long way off another season, but who has the most upside based on what you've reviewed so far to date?
Who has the most upside of the teams that missed the playoffs?
Yes.
Chargers. I mean, the Chargers, because offense is more consistent from defense than defense, and they found a stellar quarterback, and they have a defensive-minded head coach. He just needs to bring in the right players to run his scheme, and hopefully they can do more of that this offseason. Of the teams that missed the playoffs, I don't think there's any question that the Chargers are the most optimistic for the future.
Aaron, you've been called from time to time the Bill James of football analytics, in the same way he started the mantra in baseball. You started it very much in football. I actually once met Bill James. I can assure the world he looks nothing like Brad Pitt. If they were making, however, Moneyball, the football version, who would you have play you in that movie?
Oh, Brad Pitt is not supposed to be Bill James in Moneyball, I will say. He's supposed to be Billy Bean.
I meant to say he looks nothing like Jonah Hill, actually.
He looks nothing like Billy Bean either, by the way.
That's true. Billy Bean is very flattered.
I have no idea what actor looks like me. I don't really know. You have kind of hit me with a question I can't answer. I don't have a really good answer for that question.
We can do analytics based on their IMDb profile.
I don't know. Maybe like they need someone very Jewish looking who can grow a good beard. I don't know. Maybe Jason Schwartzman. He's in a lot of those Wes Anderson movies.
Can he grow a beard though?
I don't know.
Don't know.
Adrian Brody might work.
That might be the best question ever asked.
That would work.
Seriously, Mark, that might be the best question that anybody's ever asked in the show to a guest.
That is not one I have thought.
Definitely had that.
That is not one I've thought about in the past. That is not what I've thought about in the past.
Aaron, it's been fantastic to have you on the show, and we really appreciate you coming on, especially at such a busy time in the season. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you, both on social media or anywhere else relevant?
Sure. The website is footballoutsiders.com. All of our content is there, all of our advanced stats. FO Plus subscription, that's our subscription service. You can get all kinds of splits and DVOA going all the way back to 1983, fantasy football research data, picks against the spread. You'll find me on Twitter at FO_A shots, which is spelled ASCHATZ. I know I have a difficult to spell last name, but if you know how to spell it, you can find me on Twitter. And I'm always putting random stats out there or whatever I see. Comments during the games about what I'm seeing during the games I'm watching, which of course during the playoffs is the same games everybody else is watching because there's only one at a time.
Absolutely, and highly recommend following Aaron on Twitter. It's always interesting. But Aaron, just thank you again for taking the time to join us on tonight's Irish NFL show.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show again, guys.